Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown and the B-Ball Breakdown podcast as well. We have Chris Herring of the Wall Street Journal, the NBA writer who does have a bent of on the Knicks as well, to come in, and the pride of Chicago, another guard from Chicago to talk to, which is always nice. Chris, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
So, let's break right into it because obviously the Knicks are near and dear to my heart to some degree because I'm a triangle offense coach as well. Is the triangle offense a four-letter word now in New York?
Depending on who you go to, some of the fans, the media, I think we're pretty quick to judge things in New York. And so there are some people that are wondering how well it can work, if it's flawed, should they throw it out and just run something altogether differently. But no, I think most people realize, most people that are willing to give things a chance realize they need more talent for it to work the way it's supposed to work. I think what they're finding is that the different options that they want to make available in the offense aren't really there sometimes because defenses cheat. They basically will give the Knicks certain shots that really, in an ideal situation, would be like your third or your fourth option. And it's consistently becoming their first option. Jason Smith is taking way more shots than what I would want him to take because teams are just sagging off of him and letting him take those shots. From 17, 18 feet. He's a decent shooter from there, but you're not necessarily going to win games by taking shots from there the whole game. And they don't have enough penetrators in the offense. So it's clear it's not just the offense, but they need more talent. And next year will be a better judge of whether or not it works for this team.
I got into it a little bit with, Mark Cuban and then Harald Bob on Twitter, kind of were getting into it and arguing about the long twos because I was watching a lot of footage. And what I did was I isolated on just their misses. I want to see, okay, what kind of shots are they getting they're missing? And I got to tell you, a lot of them were within the context of the offense, in rhythm, good shots that you really wouldn't argue with, and they freaked out because it's like they lead the league in long twos. And so then their conclusion, falsely, would be that the triangle offense is an archaic offense designed to get long twos. And so obviously my response to that is that that's the farthest thing from the truth. It's simply designed to get open shots.
Right.
Now, you hear them talk about long twos. I said, okay, they're lambasting them so much on long twos, you would imagine they're not shooting any threes, right? They're 30th in the point attempts per 36, or they're 28th. Well, when I looked it up a week ago, they were 21st, a lot closer to average than the end of the line on three-point attempts. So the next question is, well, okay, you want to take more threes. Who are these players that you want to shoot threes? Travis Ware or like Quincy Acey? Yeah. So like, are there any secret Knicks players I don't know about that should be out there who can shoot threes at a much higher volume?
Well, that's what's interesting, and that was my issue for a while. But then after a while, you start to see that that's not exactly the problem. At one point, I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks into the season, I remember tweeting about it. The Knicks had the best or the second best three-point percentage in the league, but they were only taking the 20th most threes, and they were taking by far the most mid-range shots. They were decent from mid-range, too. They were like a top 5 offense from mid-range, but they've slipped, and obviously they've gotten rid of some of the players that were decent three-point shooters. J.R. Smith is a fantastic spot-up shooter if he's open and if he's catching and shooting. You get rid of him, you get rid of Iman Shumpert, who for the majority of his career, he's not known as a great shooter, but he's about league average from three-point range. You get rid of him. Jose Calderon not taking as many as he's used to taking and also not shooting quite as well as we're used to him shooting. Carmelo Anthony is really the big difference. Last year shot above 40% from three for the first time in his career. This year is right around 30% for the whole season. So that's the guy that you kind of rely on to hit more of his shots than what he's done. And he's also been absent from the lineup for a lot of the time. So they really don't have guys at this point. So that's exactly what I'm saying. They're not necessarily bad shots within the offense, the mid-range shots, but they are open looks. And I remember asking Jason Smith, how do you go about determining when you're going to shoot or not? You're open most of the time. And he said, I've been told to shoot whenever I'm open. And so he's going to take 15 shots some games because teams are deciding to give him that, particularly when there's no Carmelo Anthony there. So that's kind of the problem, and that's where you see talent as an issue because you don't want Jason Smith to be your first or your second option just because he's open.
I also think there's the numbers guys who I am a numbers guy, and when I'm now getting into confrontations with them on a weekly basis about stuff. So their take on it is, of course, Jason Smith would be a better shooter from three if he would just back up from 18 feet to 24 feet. Because it's one more point, of course, his percentage will go down, but it doesn't work that way. And, I want to ask any of these guys who are looking at those numbers, have you ever shot a pro three-pointer? Because to be able to take a shot with confidence in a game at game speed takes the kind of work that just doesn't happen like, oh, I'm just going to back up 4 or 5 feet and shoot this shot. Like, it will not be worth it. Like, whatever that percentage drop will be so profound. And it's also not the kind of way you should run your team. I feel like as a coach, just sort of saying, hey, all hell breaks loose, we're just shooting threes. It's not exactly how you build a team. And my argument again was, like you said, it doesn't matter what offense you'd run this year because these guys are not going to score very well no matter what you did and no matter how many threes you shot. By the way, speaking of Calderon, who's like, a good three-point shooter, do you know what he averages three-point attempts per game for his career?
Where is he at?
3.
Really?
So he's never been. Last year he did more on a great team, like 5. But he's never been a high-volume three-point shooter.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's weird, But by the way, he would be absolutely perfect in the triangle if he could play John Paxson's role. But I'm watching him now. He's like trying to drive and like kick out. It's not a good look.
Yeah, that's the issue. I mean, it's funny because I've endorsed the idea of certain guys shooting more threes than what they're accustomed to, or guys that have never shot them before. But they're for particular reasons that I suggest those people. I'm not one of those people that thinks every guy should be taking them. Jason Smith is fantastic from 18 feet, but from the areas that he shoots from, which are basically the wings, the top of the key, that's not the corner. The corner is much different because it's a shorter distance from there. So there have been some guys that I've suggested that you don't do it midseason. You don't try to do it over the course of a season. You take off seasons to do that, and you probably focus on younger guys who don't have really built-in ideas and I guess built-in kind of habits. And so what I said a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, a guy that I would have really worked with because they were struggling to find a role for him anyway, was Amari Stoudemire. Not because I think he needs to become a three-point shooter, but because I think it would have made way more sense to try to turn Amari into someone that can shoot threes than to trade for Andrea Bargnani, who can shoot threes, even doing it at 28%. Amari had been, I think I ran a number. Amari was the best two-point shooter on twos that were from 20 feet and out over like a 7-year span. I can't remember, from like 07 to 2013, 14 or something like that. And so it's like, it might be worth trying to see if you can stretch him out a little bit further, have him work from the corners. And in pregame, sometimes you see him working on that. So Quincy Acey is a guy that I think would work on it because he's started to take some in games. He's made them. He's made his long twos at like a 45% clip, and he's 24. So he's a guy that I look at and I say to myself, maybe he should work on it, but not Jason Smith. He's older. He's shooting from the wrong parts of the floor to say, oh, all you have to do is back up 6 feet, and then he can shoot a three. It's not going to work like that.
Don't forget, to hear the full-length interview, head over to the website or iTunes and subscribe to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast.